Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two and homemaker. Come along with me as I share my love for simple living, growing in my allotment garden, diving into what it means to be an urban homesteader and embracing life as a mother and homemaker. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. Today I have a topic that I'm a little nervous about. Maybe it's a little controversial, but I'm going to dive into it anyway. Just to preface it with that this is nothing to do with judgment on what you might do in your home. It's just a personal discussion of what I do in mine, and it's no judgment, no shade. You do what works for you, and let's dive into it. So today I want to talk about why we decided to stop using screens in our home with our children. Now, like I said, controversial, I know, and I know there are two sides to this coin. In fact, there are probably multiple sides to this coin. I have been on both sides. I have used screens and I have not used screens, and there are benefits of using screens for sure, and we're going to dive into them. But I wanted to kind of come and talk about why we no longer use screens at home. Screens have been on the rise in our daily life, and listen, I am not perfect. Boy, am I far from perfect. I'm sitting here in front of a computer, in front of a microphone. I've got my phone next to me. In the gaps between recording episodes, I'm looking on Instagram. I will tend to, I can pick up my phone, who knows how many times a day. I'm even too scared sometimes to look at that little metric on my phone that will tell me how many times I've unlocked my phone, because I know it's horrendous. I get this little digital well-being check-in on a Monday morning, and it's always like, you used your phone an hour and a half less last week, and I'm like, yeah, but I bet it was still horrendous. So I am not perfect, not by a long shot. Do I wish to be better? Absolutely. Am I working on it? I'm trying. But this is particularly about children, about my children. So like I said, if you do different to me, this is no judgment. You do what works for you in your own home, in your own family. But if you are interested in understanding some of the reasons why we decided to ditch screen time in our home, then definitely keep listening. But I would love to know. Come and connect with me on Instagram. I am there. You can find me at lifeonplot44. I would love to know about what you do with screen time. So screens have been absolutely on the rise in our daily lives for so long. And when I think about, back to my own childhood, I'm 38 years old. We didn't have screens when I was a kid. We had TV, obviously, but there was no mobile phones like when I was small. No mobile phones. We didn't have a computer until I was, I don't even know. I don't know when we first got a computer. But I think I was 15. Maybe 14, but around that. I didn't get a phone until I bought myself my first phone when I was 16 or 17, and even then, nothing like the phones are today. And I think we got internet when I was 15. We had AOL dial-up that made that beautiful noise, and if anybody called the house phone, they couldn't get through because I was on the internet for hours doing, I don't know, what did I used to do? Look up things about Westlife? I'm not kidding. I did used to do that. And so, my children are growing up in a completely different digital age than I did. The only screens in my home really when I was a child was the television. And I don't really remember to what extent we really watched television. I think I sometimes had it on after school, but yeah, I can't really remember. I don't really have any sort of recollection of it being on a lot. I do remember when I was a kid, I would get up on a Saturday morning and watch cartoons, and I would love doing that. but I don't really remember it being on a lot. But obviously, you know, we live in a completely different time now, and there are screens everywhere. Our homes are filled with TVs. We've got all sorts of digital devices, whether it be smartwatches, mobile phones, tablets, laptops, computers, Google Nest, Alexa. There's just, our whole lives are digitalized. And while I don't disagree with some of those things, I could not live without my Google Nest for one sole reason. I can never find my mobile phone. So I'm always asking her if she would please locate my phone for me. I have to say please. You have to say please, just like you have to say please to ChatGPT if you use AI, because one day when the robots come for us, I want them to spare me because I was polite, right? So always say please. And also, little ears are always listening, so I want to make sure that I'm modelling good behaviour when I ask the Google Nest to find my phone. But jokes aside, I would not know where my phone... I don't know where my phone is 90% of the time. I get so irritated with myself because I put it down and then that's it. So I think technologies can be great. And in terms of things like I mentioned, like AI as well, I know it's a very controversial topic too, but I, as a small business owner, do use AI for some smaller topics. So helps me keep on track with some things, helps me do some admin tasks that would maybe take me a little longer. But yeah, screens are everywhere. And, we made a decision a while ago to see what would happen if we had less screen time for our children. So it's really interesting when you look into sort of general observations and trends around children's screen time. But sort of up until, I guess, the end, have we reached the end? I don't know, the end of the pandemic. Lots of people shifted to remote working, remote learning. I had only one child at the beginning of the pandemic, and she was only 1 year old, so I didn't have to engage in all of this online learning and stuff. But I tell you one thing, the Wiggles were a mainstay in my household through lockdowns. So much actually that I can't bear the Wiggles anymore. It just transports me back to 2020, and let's be honest, I think I'm still repressing it. What happened in 2020, guys? What happened? Does anybody else feel like, was that real? Did that year happen? And 21 was a bit iffy too, to be honest, but what happened? Anyway, back to screen time. So with the pandemic, there was a lot more screen time for children. In particular, all of us, but in particular children, many children who were previously in school for the day had to spend, hours doing screen time because of, going to remote learning. And so that obviously increased, not including recreational screen time anyway. But even before the pandemic, recreational screen time was massively on the rise. And there was a report that said children aged 8 and under were spending on average over 2 hours a day on screens. And teenagers were spending even more time online, often surpassing 7 hours a day. And that is not including time for either schoolwork or homework. 7 hours a day. And then schoolwork or homework on top of that potentially. And screen time, it's this blanket statement, isn't it? And not all screen time is the same. So I would say for myself, yes, I have loads of screen time, loads and loads and loads of screen time, in terms of using a device. So probably you'll mostly find me on my phone, and other than that, maybe in front of my computer. But a lot of that is when I'm working, and it's just the nature of what I do in terms of running an online business. And it's really difficult. I find I have this such pull and push feeling about what I do, because sometimes I think like, oh, everybody just thinks like, oh, Amy's on her phone all the time. But I run an online business and it's really difficult. So, I'm like responding to emails, or I'm doing this podcast, and this podcast doesn't just happen. These words coming out my mouth now are not the end of it. I then have to edit if I need to. Often solo shows I don't edit and just do it all in one take, or edit as I go. But sometimes I do have to edit, and then there is like creating the graphics, getting it uploaded, creating the content that that go in like the show notes, and it's a lot of time just in this one thing. And then on top of that, I've got like blog posts that I do, social content that I create, and I always, it's my own personal hang-ups, but I always think like everybody's like, oh, Amy's always on her phone. But Amy's often on Canva creating something, or Amy's writing something for, something that she wants to post on Instagram that is connected to something, or, Amy's doing this or Amy's doing that. And it is still a lot of screen time, and I don't know how to do it without screen time. But I'm working on it. But not all screen time is the same. I never watch television. I watch television a couple of times a year, and that is when Drive to Survive is on Netflix, because I'm a big Formula One fan, big Fernando Alonso fan, so I always watch Drive to Survive. And I do love me a little bit Love is Blind. I do love me some Love is Blind, so I will tend to watch that when it's on as well. But other than that, most of the time if I'm on a screen, I'm working. Okay, sometimes I'm scrolling, sometimes I'm enjoying the scroll, right? We get so judged for like, oh, well, you're just scrolling on the internet, and you're like, do you know what? Sometimes scrolling on the internet is my self-care. I'm the mother and home educator of 2 small children. Sometimes I just want to sit on the toilet and scroll on my phone, leave me be, right? But not all screen time is the same. And sometimes, and particularly when it comes to children as well, sometimes there are a lot of interactive activities that can take place on screens. Video calls with family, maybe educational games. I know there are lots of good apps, like, if kids are learning to read, learning phonics. I know this as a home educator. But then there are sort of more passive things like watching YouTube videos, or watching Netflix, watching Amazon Prime or Disney Plus. So there are different kinds of screen time, just as there are with adults. And I guess one of the reasons that we sort of thought about cutting back screen time was, I guess, health concerns. They're having increased screen time, or having any screen time, can cause potential effects on physical health, like effects on your vision, but also things like potentially sleep disruption. Having all this blue light is so bad for us. It's so bad in our eyes. And trying to get away from blue light as much as possible. In terms of blue light, and knowing that I am on my device a lot, I actually use an app on my phone called Twilight, which actually gives you like a red hue on your phone, and it's better than having the blue light. I used to have, I'm on my phone right now while I'm looking. I do have on something, I have a Samsung, and there's something called an eye comfort shield, which does sort of dull the blue light a little bit, but this app Twilight does put it red light, and red light is so much better for you and doesn't interrupt your sleep as much. Also on my computer I use a program called Flux, which changes the colour of the screen in line with things like sunset, and I do have some blue light glasses as well, but I think the kids have them, so not something that I do a lot. But there is a lot of physical effects on our health, particularly with blue light. Blue light is horrendous, absolutely horrendous, and I don't think it's possible for us to avoid it, not in this modern world. And if we want to have modern conveniences like phones and laptops, and listen, I think they absolutely have their place, but yeah, it's really difficult to navigate. And we also, we had some concerns around, I don't want to say the word behaviour, because I don't believe in good versus bad or anything like that, but we had some more challenging behaviours around the use of screen time, and it was difficult, and we wanted to see if without screen time things would change, and it did greatly, which I will obviously go into. But screen time usage has been on the up, particularly for children, and it's actually recommended that children aged 2 to 5, so children under 2 shouldn't be using screens at all. Children 2 to 5 shouldn't have any more than 1 hour per day of high quality programming. In terms of, I don't know how you judge what's high quality, right? In the middle of the pandemic, I felt like the Wiggles were absolute prime high quality programming because my daughter loved it, and I just, what else are you going to do in lockdown than watch the Wiggles? But also children aged 6 and older should still have consistent limits on the amount they either watch or do, whether it be computer games, TV, etc., etc. So yeah, we had a few concerns around screen time, and it wasn't that we suddenly had concerns around screen time. We have always had concerns around screen time, and we have known all of this stuff for a really, really long time. But the pandemic threw us through a bit of a loop, I guess, and that's when we sort of started a little bit of screen time, and we have ebbed and flowed over the last few years. I'm not going to deny it. Sometimes it's a massive convenience, and sometimes sometimes we need to get stuff done, and sometimes we just my kids love Mary Poppins. They really love watching Mary Poppins. We have had Mary Poppins on in our house probably like 100 times, and they love it, and they'll sit there or play it. Sometimes they will play while it's on, but ultimately the blue light is still absolutely shining in their faces, and it screens do keep kids occupied. I get that. We have always really tried to stay away from using screens in the car. On journeys, we've never really done that. We travel quite a bit, and we have done it from time to time. I just find it more stressful than anything, to be honest, because everybody's always touching everything else and coming out of what they were watching, and I just spend all of my time turning around and breaking my back. Obviously not the driver, obviously it's the passenger, and yeah, I just never really, we did it a handful of times and it just didn't really work. And actually the kids are quite fine in the car without screens, and they have like lap trays, and we put toys and paper and pencils and things like that for them, and that seems to go fine. And like I say, we do travel a fair bit. My husband's family aren't local, so we do travel to see them, and holidays and explorations and stuff. So yeah, we have never really done that. It's always been like screen time at home. If we ever eat out, we've never done screens at tables. I know some people do that, and I can completely understand why people do that, because eating out with kids is stressful as heck. Nobody eats anything that you buy for them, and then I always find like if we ever eat out with the kids, nobody eats what we buy, and everybody is just, even if I take stuff like colouring or books or whatever, I always think that me and my husband are going to have 5 minutes to have a brief chat, and it never ever happens, never. So we just don't bother. We just do not bother. They are 2 and 4, and there's we'll go out by ourselves and get a babysitter, because we're just in that season of life at the moment. But so we have used screens in some situations. Sometimes it's convenient, sometimes it's keeping the kids occupied, sometimes it's just watching programs that they like. But we decided that we were starting to question screen time more. We've always questioned screen time. We've always known, but sometimes you just let these things slide, don't you? And we decided to just give it a try. I was actually listening to a podcast episode. Me and my husband basically had been talking about getting rid of screens, but it's so difficult to go cold turkey with things, which is ultimately what we did. But it's so difficult to do that. So I'm in an R in. Do we go cold turkey? Do we just start to reduce screen time? What do we do? Because we got to the point where we had a gap in the morning, we'd turn the TV on, and then it would be on in the background. People weren't always watching it, but the health benefits, or the health, not benefits, the negatives to health are always there, with the blue light blaring out and etc, etc. And so we'd been discussing it, and we didn't really quite know how we was going to approach it. To be honest, we was a little bit, I don't want to put words in my husband's mouth, but I certainly felt like, oh my God, if we get rid of screen time, it's going to be hell. And that's what was running through my mind. But I was listening to an episode of a podcast by Lisa from Farmhouse on Boone, and she actually had an interview with somebody I cannot remember. I will try and link it in the show notes if I remember. But it was actually about screen time in children, and I had it on. It just came on while I was listening to another episode, and that made me realise, okay, I do really want to give this a go for a lot of reasons, and it actually then ended up happening quite organically. So one of the things I wanted to do this summer was change our living room round and create a better sort of play space / home ed space for the children, and we discussed potentially getting some new furniture and fitting it out, and then actually what we did was used furniture we already had, rather than spending great money on doing something else. And as part of that process, we actually ended up putting the TV upstairs, just upstairs out the way, just in the spare bedroom floor, because we were changing things round, and we got rid of our old TV unit, and I didn't the new / old furniture units that we were using down there. I wasn't comfortable that the TV was safe like it was on the old one, and so I said to my husband, you can order these straps that make sure it doesn't tip over, particularly for my son who's only 2, and so I had to order those. And I was like, in the meantime, let's move it up and outstairs because I don't feel comfortable with it. And it has never come back down. And that was July. And the straps did come, so I did buy them. So we're ready should it ever come up. And we change our minds. But, we put the TV, it's on the floor in the spare bedroom. And nobody has ever asked for it. Nobody has ever noticed. But they know it's there. They go in that room. They know that's where the TV is. They know the TV's not downstairs. Nobody cares. We just went cold turkey and nobody cares. And I was so worried about it. But there were so many reasons why we wanted to do it, and there is so, I'm not going to go through them, but there are so many studies which discuss the effects of excessive screen time on children's cognitive development, their sleep patterns, their physical health, their emotional health, their mental health. They have decreased physical activity. There are so many things, so many reasons. And like I said, we had some challenging behaviour around the television, around who gets to pick what, and when we were trying to turn it off, challenging behaviour around that. And it just made me sort of really realise that it's such a negative thing, and I just didn't want it as part of our life anymore. But it surprised me that going cold turkey was so easy. And so it's been really interesting in terms of not using screen time ever since, because we are big in terms of play here. If you've listened to previous episodes, you'll know that I am a big proponent of toy rotation, because it really encourages having minimal toys, and it really encourages a real depth of play. And I really, really recommend giving that a try if you are overwhelmed with toys, which happens almost without you realising, I think, when you have children. So what we actually did was we streamlined our toys in general, and then we also do a rotation. So we have 3 boxes of toys, and we only have minimal toys out any one time. It still feels like a lot. Feels like I've got far too many. Don't know how to get it any smaller, but working on it. And yeah, we just rotate the toys, and they have a real depth of play when they have less to play with. And also when we get a new box out, which we do, we rotate the toys once a month. So we pack the old ones up and we get a new box out. So on average, they have their toys once every 3 months. They don't have their toys once every 3 months, but have that box of toys once every 3 months. They have toys all the time. And so they have a real depth of play. And it's something that I've noticed as well since we've got rid of screen time, is they play all the time, because they're never sitting watching. We also have set up like a craft station. They have free access to craft stuff like pens, pencils, paint sticks, child-friendly glue, all of that sort of stuff that was creating, especially my 4-year-old. She's often creating stuff for us. My 2-year-old less so at the moment, but he definitely makes lots of marks and does colouring. But yeah, I only see positives in our home from reducing screen time. And we have no challenging behaviour, obviously, around screens, because they just don't happen. And I just, I honestly couldn't advise it more, particularly for us. So if it's something that you feel like you want to try, I definitely think give it a go. Obviously, you know yourself, your house, your home, your children, you know that best, and how best to, approach that. Maybe you might want to go cold turkey, or maybe you might want to just take steps to reduce screen time gradually, and just analyse how your children react and adapt to it. But honestly, going cold turkey in our house was perfect. I didn't expect it to be, but it just went really, really perfect. And I know that's not going to be everyone's experience at all. So, like I said, you know yourself and your family best, and how's best to approach it. But this might be a no-brainer as well, but I thought I'd throw this in anyway. There are so many different things you can do instead of screen time. Some of the things we have done is, obviously, toys are always around, but I noticed the children are playing more now they don't have screen time. Obviously, I mentioned about craft stuff, having open access to craft stuff, which is new. I don't love open access to craft stuff, but here we are. But they love it. And obviously, we've always got toys and books and everything. We try and provide a really rich environment for them. But yeah, we've obviously noticed really positive behavioural shifts from reducing screen time. The children have always slept pretty well. I'm just thinking whether there's been improvements in their sleep patterns, and I actually would say yes. Because when they get into bed now, we read them a story, and they generally lay down and go to sleep. And we definitely went through a period of time, and now I'm thinking maybe it was associated to screen time. Now I'm thinking about it, where they were still really, really buzzed, and obviously blue light does that to us and does interfere with our sleep. So yeah, I definitely, anecdotally of course, but I do think that there was an improvement in their sleep patterns because of that. Now, like, listen, I know it's not easy if you're thinking about getting rid of screens. In our house, we don't have tons of screens. So me and my husband have a computer each. He works from home full time, and is on his computer during the day, but the kids don't really see that much. He works upstairs and we're not around him while he's working, so I wouldn't say they really see him on the computer a lot. When I'm working, I'm generally upstairs. I don't spend any time really around them on a laptop because they just come and hit the keys, so there would be no point. They do see us on our phones. They definitely see us on our phones. We don't have tablets in our house. The only TV we had was down in the living room. We've never ever had TV in the bedroom because we know it interferes with our sleep. So we don't have a lot of screens anyway. But if you are considering maybe a screen detox, you can have like screen-free zones around your house if you do have a lot of devices or a lot of TVs and things. I know some households have, TVs in more than one place. Or you can have screen-free days, screen-free time. I know some people do screen-free evenings, which would definitely help with sort of bedtime. And communicate with your children about why you're limiting screens in a sort of child appropriate way. And just to say that, I'm not anti-screen at all, and I know some people are, very pro letting their children regulate themselves with the screens. For us, it was almost an accidental find in that, we did that sort of like small renovation in our living room, which had the TV out there, and then realised that, actually this is amazing. But yeah, so I'm not anti-screen at all, and I'm not saying that I won't go back to using screens in some capacity in the future, but rather just having more moderation around it. There is so much value in technology and being digitally literate in today's world. Like, it's important, and it's something, as a home educator, that obviously as time goes on, I want my children to be able to use computers, use devices, be up to par with everything. So there is a value in technology and being digitally literate, but at the same time, I don't know that it's necessary for my children at this point in their life. So, and things might change. I'm very much open to the ebbs and flows in everything. And just, what I just really hope for is this sort of balanced digital future for my kids. My daughter, she knows that I use Instagram for my business and stuff, and that I have a podcast. I don't think she knows what a podcast is, but try and explain it to her, and a blog and things like that. But so that she knows that when I'm on my phone, I'm not just ignoring them, that I'm actually working to provide for our family. So it's one of those topics. It's complicated, and there's no right and no wrong, just what works for each individual family, person, child, etc. So if you are looking to cut back screen time, I hope you found this episode helpful. I hope you found it interesting, regardless of your thoughts on screen time. And I hope you just make decisions tailored to your own family's needs and what works for all of you. So I would love to know what you think, so do follow me over on Instagram. You can find me there at Life on Plot 44, and I hope you found this episode just offers a balanced perspective, just detailing my personal journey, while hopefully recognising the broader nuances of this screen time debate. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will catch you in my next